Good evening, it's Adil Fazal, market analyst for CFDs.com, a leading spread betting and CFD brokerage. Please visit their website to look at their services further. It's www.cfds.com. Or alternatively, you can visit the educational website, which I provide content regularly with charts, analysis, etc. at www.cfds.education. Okay. Right, this is a video with regards to European market analysis, a wrap-up of European indices today, and what I expect is going to happen in the next 24 hours. Okay, let's try to sum this up. Okay, so first of all, Asian markets overnight. The Shanghai, obviously, pretty stellar performance overnight. Finished pretty strongly, up 1.6, 1.7%. The Nikkei, or Japanese market, is on holiday, I think, till the 23rd, from what I can recollect. So that's certainly something worth noting. Japanese market's closed for public holiday. So it's basically China, and China really is the market that's going to move every other market now, given the fact that the Federal Reserve has utilised the excuse or utilised the reason for a delay in obviously a rate hike due to the fact that emerging markets stability is a concern for them. Okay, so China is going to dictate. It's going to be very important going forward, along with the Nikkei as well, given the QE trade with regards to the yen. Okay, so with regards to the Chinese markets, obviously higher overnight. The euro obviously played a factor today with regards to Germany. Obviously the PPI data coming out lower than expected, so that certainly put pressure on the euro on the downside, especially given the fact that we had very hawkish commentary today. A lot of damage control post FOMC interpretation that the Fed was not going to pull the trigger. Obviously that's certainly not the case, because a lot of the Fed members today were certainly on the extremely hawkish side and said that the decision was very, very close. And one or two even dissented and rejected Ms. Yellen's stance of no rate hike, etc. So again, it's dollar strength, which means weaker euro, which obviously helps European exports, and that's a positive side of the equation there. Obviously weaker inflation data again, given the fact that Mr. Draghi is on tap this week to speak. Obviously he will have his QE bazooka ready, and obviously central banks, when they have the put in the market, then obviously when you have a central bank put, it's always the buy the dippers will certainly step in, and the market will certainly catch a bid and move higher, especially with the euro decreasing. And obviously the QE trade is in full stream, i.e. short euro, long equity. So that certainly is a factor as well. So you've had Chinese data, weaker PPI, but the market, well, the major factor or the major concern for European markets was Volkswagen shares. The Volkswagen shares obviously give with regards to their emission controls, or their ability, or their I wouldn't like to call it fraud, but their swindling. I think that's probably the best way of doing it. Okay, this is the article that actually on Bloomberg itself. So obviously Volkswagen lost almost a quarter of its market value in a matter of minutes, etc., etc. It's all about US air pollution tests for years that basically cheated. German auto giant faces up to 18 billion in fines and prosecutions, and etc., etc. So the German sector itself obviously is certainly under pressure. Having said that, though, and this is a chart that I've already shared, I will bring this up now actually. Where are thou? Here we are. Bring up the German automaker. Let's just go to DAX sectors. The automobile sector certainly has been under pressure regardless, and certainly looking at the weekly chart, you can see that it's already been sold off quite substantially already anyway. A lot of the weak data or the bearish news with regards to Volkswagen, to a large extent, one could presume that has already been factored in, given the impressive sell-off that we witnessed. The daily chart itself, it's basically putting a bottoming tail there, obviously held double bottom support. So don't get obsessed with the Volkswagen news, is basically my message. Certainly take it with a pinch of salt, and bear in mind the market is an efficient discounting mechanism, so more or less it's already been discounted. Okay, so it's old news now. New news basically will be all about Draghi, and obviously the Euro USD as well. So obviously Volkswagen hit the markets pretty hard this morning, and that's certainly dampened sentiment, etc., from the Chinese move higher, and certainly caused the German markets to come under immense pressure. Now, if I just bring up the chart of the German DAX, just be able to show you in terms of the movements there. Okay, bring up a 10-minute chart of the German DAX, and you can see here as soon as the market opens. We did have a initial short squeeze rally up to gap fill. As soon as more or less we reached gap fill resistance, the market's obviously started to sell off then quite substantially. We hit a pivot low of 9780 region, and obviously the markets have certainly pushed higher and reversed quite substantially ever since. Okay, we are now currently experiencing an inverted head and shoulders formation. As you can see here, the target already remains at the 1080 level, so a 10080 level. Alternatively, we do have another inverted head and shoulders formation forming around here, and you do have a potential reversal and pullback here. So you have the small inverted head and shoulders, and you have the slightly large inverted head and shoulders, with the neckline being 9960, 9760, call it basically a 200-point move. You're looking at 11060 and potentially gap fill at above. Gap fill obviously is around the 10230 level, and don't be surprised if that gets hit, especially given the fact that Mr. Draghi is basically scheduled this week, and he'll have his QE bazookas ready, especially given the fact that the FOMC on Ms. Yellen prevented the rate hike, and obviously that's not helping him in terms of him attempting to lower its currency, which helps exports. So there certainly is some fighting, or basically a lot of dovish talk expected from him, and that will certainly send the euro lower. Okay, now I've basically covered fundamentals. So basically it was all about the Volkswagen story, China higher, PPI data, obviously US home sales as well, which I've discussed on the actual FTSE 100 video. That certainly dampened sentiment, and also we had the news with regards to the Apple malware attack. So if the Nasdaq is generally under pressure, the German DAX is usually under pressure too. Okay, now bringing up the technical picture, so we always start off with the German DAX, looking at the weekly chart. Very, very important, this candle. The pivot low was obviously put in at around the 9350 level, so the bottoming tail is certainly in. We are expecting, from my understanding of my analysis, I am expecting a potential bull flag and a pivot low here in German indices, given the fact that Mr. Draghi obviously will do his thing, okay, i.e. talk down the euro, and obviously be ready with regards to additional stimulus, and that's obviously bullish for stocks, especially given the fact that the Chinese story is now factored in. Even the Volkswagen story certainly is factored in, and it's very hard to find any bearish news from that perspective. Okay, daily chart from the actual German DAX itself. You're looking at a no real support here on a daily chart, to be honest with you. From a technical perspective, it's very hard to justify support here. You'd have to rely more on fundamentals. We're looking at a 60-minute chart on the German DAX. You do have lower lows and lower highs, so one needs to be very careful. You have this favourable retracement of a 38% resistance. The real test will come at 10080, okay, and that's the inverted head and shoulders target, because its previous support equals resistance, and obviously pivot is around the fib 61%. So if you are going to see any resistance, it's going to be in that zone there initially. So watch out for 10080, and obviously if that gets cracked, then you're looking at the next level around the 10150, which is a diagonal trendline resistance. If the German DAX starts to push higher based on QE talk, based on the euro being debauched, obviously then you are looking at gap fill above, which is around this region here, which is around the 220 region. Okay, so that certainly is a zone that we are going to observe. Looking at today, so very, very important to observe. Cross-referencing the German DAX with the given the fact that we have an inverted head and shoulders formation on the 10 minutes chart. If I go over to the MDAX, just bring up the chart. Okay, so the MDAX on the daily chart itself is certainly holding, has not put in a lower low, is still holding and attempting to make a higher low. 60-minute chart certainly has held this pivot low support level here. Okay, we have support, multiple areas of support below, but for now it certainly has held. On the 60-minute chart we do have a potential bull flag formation. Okay, bear in mind that we do have this unfilled gap up here that certainly needs closing, and this can be observed on the 10-minute chart as well. As you can see here, we have an unfilled gap that certainly needs to close on the MDAX itself. Okay, we certainly have made a pivot low on the German DAX, so that certainly needs to be respected as well. Okay, so previous resistance equals support for now at this current juncture. on the actual German DAX itself. Okay, so we're back into this zone at 19,550, 19,530. Okay, understand. So this is the zone that we certainly are in. Above the resistance zone above is going to be 19,700, and then bear in mind the on-fill gap at 19,750. We also cross-reference that with a tech whole share. The tech whole share certainly putting a bottoming tail intraday, so that certainly needs to be respected. Certainly came back strong given the weakness due to Volkswagen. Although having said that, on the 60-minute chart there certainly is some type of alarm with regards to a HNS formation. So again, a lot will depend on how the markets react overnight in China and then obviously subsequently into the Asian session. So again, that certainly is a warning sign, given the fact, especially given the fact that the malware attack with regards to Apple, etc., and given the fact that we have closed the gap as well. So short term, certainly some resistance in the tech sector in terms of the German DAX, and like I said, mainly due to the share price of Apple and how the Nasdaq has certainly been oscillating in the US session. So as you could see there, gap fill, and then obviously diagonal trend line resistance, so certainly indicating resistance there. Now going back to the German DAX, given the fact that it's a leader in Europe, like I said, you have the inverted head and shoulders formation, so that's something certainly that we're going to keep an eye out for, and you have the on-fill gaps above. But bear in mind, like I said, with regards to the actual movements with regards to Euro USD, so if we switch over to the Euro USD, and that will be very, very imperative from my understanding and my perspective. The daily chart itself, yes, we have reversed, given the fact that the actual comments with regards to the hawkish comments coming out of the FOMC today, and obviously weaker inflation data out of Germany. If you go to our 4-hour chart on the German DAX itself, sorry, the Euro USD, we certainly have sold off quite substantially. We've broken below that diagonal trend line as well. For now, it certainly seems to be reversing. We did break below that key resistance or key support region. The next support level, realistically, and looking at it from a technical perspective, really is going to be below 1.1130 region, and obviously 1.090 region as well. So there was a chance of, or there is a possibility, a probability of a HNS formation here, as we can see here. Left shoulder, obviously the failure of the bull flag, and the markets continue to sell off. Bear flag formation, the markets flush lower. So we could certainly see a potential flush higher. Then obviously you are looking for a potential move lower, going into the Draghi meeting and Draghi speech on Thursday. So again, a lot will have the Euro USD will have the final say from my perspective, and certainly needs to be observed very, very carefully. Going over to the French CAC now and seeing where that stands from a technical perspective. Bring up the French CAC. Okay, so let's move to a daily chart, and we can cross-reference this with the actual German DAX. The French CAC certainly is in a more solid footing, so if I were to go into long, I would certainly be looking to long the French CAC from my perspective, and have a bullish bias obviously with regards to the French index. The 60-minute chart itself has held support, as you can see. Unlike the German DAX, has made a lower high, or should we say a lower low. This certainly has held that pivot support and is actually attempting to build a base. Now we do have the unfilled gap above, so bear that in mind on the 60-minute chart. So that certainly is an argument for a potential thruster or move higher. And then you have this bull flag formation as well. So German DAX certainly is under pressure due to Volkswagen, but French CAC certainly here tells another story. As you can see there in the 10-minute chart, we've obviously bounced off the low. From a technical perspective, you do have an inverted head and shoulders formation that is certainly active on the French CAC, so that's something that you certainly keep an eye out for. You've got the left shoulder here, obviously pivot low here, then obviously the market's reversed and rallied quite substantially. And again, the target zone would again be the unfilled gap above for the French CAC. Cross-reference in the French CAC with the volatility index, as you can see here, daily chart certainly bearish engulfing. 60-minute chart itself certainly wants to attempting to move lower on the volatility index for the French CAC. CAC mid small against holding that pivot zone or pivot support zone. Again, looking bullish in terms of the markets no longer making lower lows. Certainly has built a base and is attempting to move higher, given the fact that it's a bull flag formation. CAC mid 60 again, same Same formation, and certainly is looking like it wants to put in an inverted head and shoulders formation and attempt to move higher. So you have your left shoulder there, your head obviously goes in there, you're looking at a bull flag, and then the market's obviously pushing higher from here. So very, very important in terms of the market moves on the actual French CAC. Okay, now going back to the French CAC itself, just to conclusion, certainly is bullish, certainly more bullish than the actual German DAX, given the fact that it has 1 weak link. Okay, although having said that, I have showed you the chart of the automobile sector in terms of the DAX, and that certainly is potentially putting in a bottom. Now we do have a potential bull flag candidate here again on the S&P 350, Europe 350, so very, very important. 60-minute chart again, certainly putting a base, so certainly an argument to propel higher provided the Euro USD can move lower from my perspective. Okay, now the Euro stocks, let's move on to the Euro stocks now and see if we can gain any sort of insight with regards to Euro stocks. Euro stocks itself, as you can see, this is the volatility index for the Euro stocks. You can clearly see an H&S formation being built there, which in turn means obviously the Euro stocks is going to go higher. Going to the actual index itself, Euro stocks 50. Okay, starting off with a weekly chart, we certainly have put in a bottoming tail like we discussed last time. We certainly are attempting to move higher from here, going into Draghi. You do have the bear flag formation, so that certainly is a concern from my perspective on a daily chart, and you do need more evidence of a bullish move. Having said that, the 60-minute chart certainly is building a base, or has built a base, and you have this bull flag formation here with the unfilled gap above. So certainly a good case in the 60-minute chart for the Euro stocks to move higher. Now the Euro stocks itself, we are in this zone again, so your resistance zone is going to remain at 3198, failed to propel and move higher. Okay, so from my understanding and my perspective thus far, you have support zone at 3165, 3150, and then obviously 3140. Provided these support zones hold, we should certainly start to propel higher from my understanding and my interpretation thus far. The 5-minute chart really isn't going to give you much of an edge. For now, you're working above anything above 3300. Certainly triggers a short squeeze next to the zone above up to 3230, then obviously gap fill, which is around the 3260 level on the Euro stocks, and again that's dependent upon the Euro USD obviously moving lower, so that's very, very important. So all eyes on the Euro USD and its potential next move, whether if it's lower or higher. As you can see in the 60-minute chart there, you clearly have a H&S formation, so certainly a potential candidate for obviously a move lower. As you can see here, is your left shoulder, head going there, your right shoulder, and obviously move lower. The pivot high on the Euro USD is 1.1460, the pivot low is 1.1260 more or less. So you're looking at a 200-point move, so you're looking at least 1.1060, so you're looking at another 100-point potential move on the Euro USD, and that's dependent upon risk. If risk increases, then obviously the QE trade is reversed, European equities lower, Euro USD higher, and vice versa. So it's important for us to gauge risk, and obviously the economic data that comes through as well, and obviously observe how the Chinese markets react as well. So I hope that's given you an insight. Again, just to conclude, the German DAX is the key indices. We do need to have support on the German DAX. So from my perspective, whenever the German DAX is into support, I'll be looking to buy the CAC and the Euro stocks because they are the more stronger indices. I think that's a wrap. Goodbye now. Again, please do visit www.cfds.com for your spread betting and CFD needs. Also visit the educational website www.cfds.education for my latest charts and analysis. Goodbye.